Hey, Merry Christmas, Central Oregon. How are you doing tonight? Man, it's so weird to say tonight. The lights are really bright when there's no other light in the room. So, like the first two rows, Merry Christmas. I'll catch the rest of you after service. Oh, Christmas, we promised to keep this short, and so I'll keep my message short, and I know you're all excited about that. But Christmas has become a lot of things, and some of those things we really get upset about, right? That Christmas has become about shopping and gifts and food, and then there are a few, like those are the things we think of when we say, no, we got to keep Jesus as the main thing. But there are a few things that Christmas has become about that don't have to replace Jesus, but they're so still important to us, right? Like we have Christmas Eve service. We don't need to have Christmas Eve service to celebrate Jesus and to celebrate his birth, but man, this is like my favorite service of the year. I love doing this because it means that I get to celebrate his birth with you and with my community. Another thing that Christmas means to so many of us is family. And I actually have family in from out of town. My grandmother's in from Washington. Another grandmother lives here in town, all the way down like 4 generations now to my youngest nephew. And it's neat. I have aunts and uncles and cousins and stuff that we only get to see each other around holidays and things like that. And last night, we sat down with my kids and we remembered all of our Christmases that we could remember in the past. And admittedly, my kids remembered some things about Christmas that I'm not sure happened. But it's still, those things aren't Jesus, but they're not the things that we get like frustrated about, right? When we say, no, that's not the reason for the season. And as I thought about this last night, after spending a time with my family, with my kids, just reminiscing about Christmases in the past, I thought about the Bible several times calls our kids a blessing. Calls children a blessing. In Psalm 127, verse 3, it says, children are a gift from the Lord, that are a reward from him. And I thought, man, that's so neat. Because I feel pretty spoiled. I've got 2 pretty decent kids. And it goes on to say in verse 4, children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hands. And the nice thing with Christmas and Christmas Eve and Christmas Eve services and all these things that we do together is it's this opportunity, whether they're your own kids or somebody else's kids. I mean, my kids have aunts that are not related to us at all, but they love them. And Barbara Goodall brings us sugar cookies every holiday. It can be a Hallmark holiday that's just made up. She brings sugar cookies. Like, they don't have to be your kids. Just kids are a blessing. I love Sophia, like Whittington. She's a blessing in my life. She's a gift to me. Not because she's mine, but because she's beautiful. She's a creation that God's placed in my life. And look, my son turns 18 2 weeks from today. Yeah. So when I think about arrows in the hands of a warrior, like my bow is stretched right now, getting ready to launch him toward his target in his next season in life. And everything these last 18 years have taught me, I find myself agreeing with what John said. In 3 John, verse 4, it says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are following the truth. And the nice thing, moms and dads, if we do our job really well, and we endure all the things that our kids throw at us, and we spend hours on our knees in prayer, we get to enjoy the spoils. In Proverbs chapter 17, verse 6, it says, grandchildren are the crowning glory of the aged. Yeah, right? Because you just get to take them, and then you fill them full of sugar, and then you send them back home to us. But God's shown us how much children mean to him. He says they're a gift. That children are a gift to us. They're a blessing. He says these things over and over and over again, that they bring great joy, that we must become like children to inherit the kingdom of God. And so many more things throughout the Bible that God calls children blessed, and how much he loves and cherishes our kids. And as I was thinking along this path, it made me think of a verse, and I said it last Sunday, and probably if you've spent any time in church, you know this verse. If you watched football throughout the 1980s, you saw in the end zone, John chapter 3 and verse 16. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life." I thought about that because I was thinking like a dad. And it made Christmas so much more meaningful to me. Because this isn't God sending Jesus. This isn't like the creator of the universe sending a sacrifice. This is a dad sending his son. And we know how God feels about kids. He says they're a blessing. He says that they're a gift. He says that we need to become like them. And he says so many things over and over again about kids, and I can't help but imagine, what did he think about his own kid? He would have thought the same things, right? Because if my kid's a blessing to me, then wouldn't his son be a blessing to him? If somebody else's kid is a blessing to me, then wouldn't Jesus be so much a blessing to his Father? And the thing about John 3:16 is we read that like that's the end of the whole story, and it's such a key part of the story. It says God gave his only Son because he loved us. This thing that was a blessing to him, this person, this son that would have been a gift to God, and he gave it. And when we think about Christmas, those of us that like we're a little more grown, right? We're past the what am I going to get for Christmas stage of life. I mean, I'm at like an age now where if I want something, I just buy it. And if it's July, then it's July. Like, I'm not waiting for December, right? I mean, either I can afford it or I can't. If I can't, I'm probably not going to be able to afford it in December either. So it just doesn't happen, right? But like, Crystal will get after me because it'll be like the end of November. And I'll be like, I want that, so I get it. And she's like, Clint, we're like 3 weeks from Christmas. Can you just wait? I'm not hard to buy for. You just got to buy it on time. But we know that, like, seeing the joy in our kids as they open gifts is way better than the gifts we get, because like I said, mom and dads, we just go buy our stuff, right? We have jobs, so you can do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. My kids ask me for stuff. I'm like, you can have that. Just go get a job, and you can go buy stuff all year long too. But we understand this thing of giving at Christmas and the importance even just of what generosity means in our life, and how, we say it's more blessed to give than to receive. And that's never been more true than in John chapter 3 and verse 16. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave." It doesn't say he so loved the world that he required of us. It Doesn't say, for God so loved the world that he sent a law. He sent a son to fulfill a law. And see, I can imagine as a dad, it would have been easier to just say, you know what? There's a system in place of sacrificing animals. It's not ideal. It's probably not sustainable, but it's a lot better than sending my son to die. See, because there was a broken system, but it was a system. And like, a system's got to be pretty bad for me to send my son to die. But that's what he did, because he so loved the world that he gave. And then that wasn't the end of the story. Like I said, it goes on, and in Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 2, kind of gives us the conclusion of this story. It says, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Jesus endured, my kids have a pretty decent life, but it's not heaven. They'll tell you that. My house is nice. It's not heaven. Jesus left heaven to come here and live a perfect life, and then lay down his perfect life for us. Because, see, the joy set before him, it says, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. See, the joy was not the cross. If you've ever seen images of crucifixion, you know that was not the joy. The joy was the reward on the other side of the tomb. The joy was the opportunity to spend eternity with you. That's the joy. And again, those of us that are a little bit more mature and have some years on us know that the best things, the best joy, the best reward always comes through some struggle. I pray that your struggle never takes you to crucifixion. But it's the same principle that, when I tell my kids, you can have that if you get a job, you can work for it. Jesus worked for you. Jesus put in 33 years of living a perfect life so that he could pay a debt that only we can accrue. See, we've racked up a bill that there's no way we can pay. And Jesus said, look, I've got it. I've got it. I can pay this. And that's why these two verses matter. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. And that's not just because we believe in him. It's because of what he did. It's because he lived a perfect life. Because he lived a life that is the only way to pay for our debt. So that on the other side of the cross, he'd have the opportunity to spend eternity with you. We're going to pass out some candles. But as we do, go ahead and stand. As we do that, you'll probably need to help a little bit with this. I just want you to take a few moments and think about this stuff. If you have kids, think about the blessing they are in your life. If you don't have kids, just think about the blessing you are to your parents' life. Obviously a blessing. But as you think about these kids, your friends' kids, nieces, nephews, just kids in the church that you see. We've got a bunch of good ones. If you don't know kids, I'll introduce you to, we have several awesome kids around the church. There's a few of them right up here. Kids are a blessing. But then think about how much more meaningful that is. That God sent his only son. This gift, this blessing, to die on a cross for you.